Okay, welcome to episode 26 of the Cigar Snob podcast. We are fresh off of our celebration of 25 episodes, now moving on to the next stage in our lives with episode 26.
Woo!
Oh, baby. I'm Nick Jimenez. I am joined by Eric Calvino.
Woo!
And Ivan Ocampo.
Hello.
All right, so in this episode of the podcast, we will, of course, be smoking a cigar that is special to this episode. We'll be talking about fake Barack Obama. We'll be talking about new stuff that's happening in Cuba.
Spoiler alert? Why'd you do spoiler alert on fake?
Well, people don't know what a fake Barack Obama is.
All right.
They don't know what that means.
Right.
Now you're spoiling. Now we have a spoiler alert. Exploding airplane stuff, news from the cigar world, and all sorts of other things. But first, a word from our sponsor, Villiger Cigars. Villiger Cigars, celebrating 130 years in tobacco, unveils its first ever full-bodied premium handmade cigar in the Villiger La Vencedora. The Villiger La Vencedora is the follow-up cigar to the highly acclaimed Villiger La Flor de Inclán and Villiger Sandoro Colorado. This Nicaraguan puro, wrapped in a beautiful Nicaraguan Habano puro wrapper, boasts a potent, full-bodied smoking experience featuring highly seasoned, hearty flavors. The Villiger La Vencedora, which translates to the Victor, emits a billowing aromatic smoke throughout the smoky experience. The Villiger La Vencedora, a palate-pleasing, full-bodied, yet elegant cigar that will satisfy the cigar connoisseur as well as the casual smoker. Okay, and we're back with this episode's featured cigar. On this episode of the Cigar Snob podcast, we are smoking FSG by Drew Estate. For those of you who are unfamiliar, FSG is a Drew Estate product that includes fillers grown in Florida on the Florida Sun-Grown Farm, which is owned by Jeff Borshwicks, who is also the owner of Corona Cigars. What do they have? 3 locations in Orlando, right?
3 in Orlando.
3 in Orlando, and he's a partner with Davidoff at Davidoff Tampa.
So yeah, it's the in Orlando. It's the downtown Dr. Phillips, and I can't remember what the name of the other one is.
Right,
Sand Lake.
Yep.
I think you're right.
Yep. That's the only one I've been to, so I know that one.
Mm.
So a little bit of what Corona has to say about this cigar. I'll read a little bit more than usual because this is sort of a unique product in the sense of the origin of one of these tobaccos. So, after 5 years of planning, trials, success, and setbacks, hard work and dedication, we are humbled and blessed to be able to share with you Florida Sun-Grown Cigars. For nearly 175 years, Florida had a rich and storied history of growing some of the world's finest cigar tobacco. Florida was once the second largest producer of premium cigar tobacco in America. There were thousands of acres grown just north of Tallahassee in the towns of Quincy and Havana, Florida. Havana, Florida, who knew? In fact, the reason they named the town Havana was so that unscrupulous tobacco brokers could label Florida-grown tobacco as being grown in Havana and sell it at a premium to unsuspecting cigar factories all across America as the more expensive imported tobacco from Havana, Cuba. In the 1890s,
In Miami, that would be Maraña.
Maraña, tremendous Orlando Maraña. In the 1890s, Cuba was fighting for their independence from Spain. To escape the war and the blockade on Havana Harbor, some Cuban tobacco growers established large tobacco farms in Fort Meade so they could continue to supply American cigar factories with tobacco. So up until Jeff came around and started this operation, it had been a very long time since anybody grew any premium cigar tobacco in Florida. And in fact, we did a story on this, 2 years ago now?
Yep.
And he told us all about the fact that he had to go back to all of these like turn of the century documents to figure out some of the details of at least how they were doing it back then. But of course, now you're taking this super old playbook and having to update it, learning as you go.
But I think if I remember correctly, hadn't there been some tobacco grown right there in Claremont, like in 1970s or something like that?
Right.
That was
the
last time.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there hadn't been any at all since the 70s. But I mean, even by the 70s, it had been way diminished. So this cigar has some of that Florida tobacco in the filler. It's also got a Brazilian Arapiraca Maduro wrapper and a Honduran Habano binder and filler from Nicaragua. This is that's the blend information
from Nicaragua and
Florida Sun-Grown. So that's the information, by the way, from the Corona website.
CoronaCigar.com.
Correct, yeah. I don't know whether from the first crop that was used to present day, the rest of that blend has changed, because this is such a brand new thing that they're doing, and they may have adjusted some of these things. So if you got one of the very first FSGs, I'm not 100% positive that was the blend then. Maybe not.
Well, I mean, even with any cigar in general,
of course,
blends tend to change because of harvest changes and condition changes, and so that happens naturally. I imagine even more so when you have such a new tobacco growing region.
So we're all smoking this in different sizes, and I think it may even be different batches.
Yeah, I think mine is from like the 2017 trade show. Here's a light. Mine is from the 2017 trade show, and I think you guys are smoking from the most recent batch that they sent us a few months ago. We've got change. Mine is like a Toro. Yours is like a Grand Toro, and Ivan's is like a box press Toro. So
right.
It's been a while since I smoked one of these, but I remember when they first launched. It was such a unique flavor profile because of the combination of the Florida tobacco and the wrapper and the binder. I'm just lighting it up now. I want to see if there's a big difference between what I smoked then and now.
It's a smooth cigar.
Yeah. Right.
It still has the sort of requisite punch that you want out of something with a Nicaraguan core. So it's got that, and it's got the sweetness from the Arapiraca that I'm enjoying. But like Ivan said, it does have a unique tobacco characteristic that isn't. It's unique, right? I mean, I was about to say it's not found anywhere else. Well, yeah, it's unique.
Yeah, I remember when we were around people, even like at the barn smoker, one of the very first barn smokers that they did on the FSG farm, everybody was super intrigued while they were smoking it. And I know this sounds negative, but people were bringing it up in like this is kind of interesting, it's different, not in a, I can't wait to stop smoking this, but they were bringing up the word medicinal. And it has some of that kick, but in this way that doesn't turn you off. This has some of that, but it's toned down. They've brought more balance into the blend.
I'm not getting that flavor that you're talking about, which I do remember. I'm not getting any of that right now.
Yeah, so you guys are smoking a later iteration. So by now they've probably obviously there's an element of experience too, right? Willie Herrera, which is the blender for this, the master blender. It obviously takes some time to get yourself familiarized with a particular tobacco and what it brings to a blend.
Yeah.
So I imagine there's some of that.
And there's nobody to turn to for advice. So Willie can't go to other blender friends and be like, hey, what do you do with it? Like, it's, at least at the time. By now, there are some others who've gotten their hands on it.
You're on an island here, Chief.
Right, exactly.
It felt like a science project back then,
Right.
Yeah. Like, what do we do with this new tobacco that hasn't been grown here in so long?
Which was a lot of fun to be around for and to, like, see that develop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
Yeah, and so I still, this particular one that I'm smoking, it does taste exactly like those early ones that I was smoking. Maybe not exactly, but because it's been sitting in the humidor for a while. But it does have a recognizable flavor profile for me compared to the ones that I smoked early on. I remember we bought a couple boxes the day of that event.
Yeah,
if you remember, Nick. And so one box we kept, and I still have it sealed, and then the other box we distributed amongst everyone here in the office. So yeah, we tasted that quite a bit, and this does have that flavor for me.
Yeah. So we will revisit this cigar later on in the podcast, and also get into some of why we're smoking it now. So stay tuned. Don't go to the next podcast just yet. We have another thing that we want to talk about, which is Jordan Peele. So there was a BuzzFeed video that went viral, and it is Jordan Peele of Key and Peele fame, also of Get Out fame, doing I don't know if I'd call it a PSA, but it was like built like a PSA.
Yeah, PSA-ish.
Yeah, with BuzzFeed, and the whole thing is him presenting a video of Barack Obama saying very un-Barack Obama-y things. And it's Barack Obama's face, and you're looking at him say all this stuff, and then...
And it's his voice, and it's his hand gestures, and it's his pausing in between words, right? So it
Right.
very much his manner of speaking.
And then they go split screen, and you find that it's Jordan Peele talking over, I don't know if CGI is the word here, but over a manipulated Obama face to look like those are the things he's saying. So the reason that it's sort of like a PSA is that they build to this message of like, it's more important now than ever to be cognizant of fake news and all that sort of stuff. We'll play a clip in here.
President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. That's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources.
All right, so we've all seen this now, right?
Yep.
What were your initial thoughts when you came across this thing?
I was impressed by the production of it. Kind of tuned out the message.
Sure.
In typical Ivan fashion.
Very well done.
Yeah, no.
Besides
Did you notice? Did you see the, what to me was a noticeable difference? You could see his mouth moving strangely. His face looked a little saggy, like weird.
Yeah.
So I caught that right away. I didn't know that it was fake. I didn't know what it was, but I thought, wow, did he age so fast after?
Right.
I thought, I thought it would be doing much better now. And so he looked like he had aged. He looked weird to me. And then when it goes to split screen, I realized why it looked weird.
Right.
So that's just what I caught. But I live in a world where I'm constantly looking at imagery and video and I'm looking into when a model for us looks fake and when it looks real, and so I don't know. Maybe I'm tuned to that, right?
He did seem less animated.
Yeah.
When it was just the Obama on there, he seemed less animated, less cool, as my dad calls him, cigarette smoking Obama. Like not that cool. So he just like seemed more toned down. So there was something up.
Yeah, I guess for me it was cool, but at the same time it felt a little bit forced in terms of the message, because we're not at a point where that could pass for more than 5 minutes. Like that's not going to make the rounds in a news cycle, and even know like the voice sounded a little off because it wasn't one of these like we have software that makes you say stuff. It was, no, we have an impersonator who's a little bit off, right? Like Jordan Peele does a good Obama, but he's not Obama. And so, yeah, I guess I wonder whether it's a little premature. It feels like it's as politically motivated as it is motivated by like beware of this technology, especially just, that they chose, they're manipulating Obama, right? Like there's a reason that they did it the way they did it when they did it.
Sure.
At a time when there's all the fake news stuff. It's almost like they're throwing this perfectly timed science fiction horror show in front of you, like imagine how terrible this could get.
Yeah.
So it was impressive in terms of the impersonation, and the visual was pretty close to spot on, but there was enough off that when they throw that PSA message at, I was like, all right, calm down. We're not at this post-apocalyptic fake presidents all over the news place just yet. But I mean, we're headed there, right? And what does that mean? I think it was the Russians not too long ago, as sort of a demonstration of their photoshopping prowess, put out an image of the moon landing with a Russian flag. And they're offering a reward for anybody who, I mean, obviously it wasn't them, but they're offering a reward for anybody who can prove in some like digital forensic way that it's a fake photo. And so far, nobody's been able to show that the photo was doctored. So
have they gotten Ramon on that? Our Ramon?
We got to get our
retouching Ramon.
Our cigar retoucher.
We need Ramon on the case.
Yep.
If you all only knew how many of the cigars in the magazine are actually ballpoint pens that we have photoshopped beyond recognition into beautiful cigars. So our man is on the case. So anyway, we're going to have a link to this Jordan Peele video in the description.
Hey, do you want to clarify that we don't use pens for cigars?
That's right. Yeah, we don't use pens for cigars. Sometimes we make cigars into pens. but we don't use pens for cigars.
We actually have had
Yeah,
that.
we have done that. So yeah, look for a link to that video in the description of this podcast. You can find
If
that
you haven't seen it already.
if you haven't seen it already. Yeah, I hadn't seen it until you brought it up though. So you know, there's probably a good number of people, and I look at a lot of stuff. So there's probably some people
I
out
got
there.
one on Nick, dude.
I know. Yeah, you got
amazing.
one. You got one on me.
It's crazy.
No horn or anything for that.
Oh,
For
here
that
we go, here we go.
achievement.
Cue the
For the
horn.
achievement of here we go.
Someone
There it is.
discovers a video before Nick
There it is.
honestly deserves a horn.
Dilly dilly.
And a dilly dilly.
I'm so lost on Dilly Dilly. Let's see how long we can keep that streak going. Speaking of Weekend at Bernie's type magic, we've got the corpse of Raul Castro finally waddling off of the president's seat in Cuba. So
No horn.
no horn for that. Just a quick update. This has been all over the news, but we'll do a quick summary. Raul Castro, and this had been a long time coming. It wasn't a surprise. They had scheduled this this vote, so to speak. Raul Castro is no longer the president in Cuba, but he still heads the Cuban Communist Party, and so he is definitely like in the lead in terms of policy making. But the chief executive is now Miguel Díaz-Canel. He was born in 1960. He was an engineer. He has been a party official for a long time, as well as a minister of higher education. And he is now in the president's seat. And it's sort of an open question what that means for Cuba. Of course, most people on both sides, and it's kind of one of those interesting things where the opposite sides of the Castro divide, right, are in agreement that it doesn't mean anything. Because
Correct.
on the anti-Castro side, you've got people saying like, no, Cuba's still going to be the same shithole, to borrow a Trumpism.
Yep.
And on the other side, you got people saying, I actually was just watching an interview with a former ambassador of Cuba's, where he's saying, no, this is change for continuity, right? So, which is
That's
great,
awesome.
which is pretty great.
This is the equivalent in football terms of hiring an offensive coordinator when your head coach is the play caller on the team. Kind of like if you were to hire like an offensive coordinator on the Saints, even though Sean Payton's calling all the shots.
Yeah. Yeah, we had that here at one point. We had that with the Dolphins. We had
Yeah.
Philbin, and then Sherman was the offensive coordinator.
Right.
So, yeah, you're right. That is a very similar situation there.
Yeah, so Cuba has a new offensive coordinator
/ tool.
/ tool.
Slash mouthpiece.
But yeah, I mean, worth bearing in mind that the Cuban Communist Party is the only party that exists legally in Cuba. So whoever is running the party and setting the agenda for the party is dictating to the president what the president's doing. Do we have anything we want to add?
No, that doesn't change anything.
It
for
doesn't
me.
change a whole
I mean,
lot
as
of
a as
anything,
a as a Cuban-born American citizen, it changes nothing for me.
Right. It'll be interesting to see what how people in Cuba respond to it, or how it affects their view of government. Because I think even people in Cuba who are not on board with the Castro regime saw there being a Castro as like a, or at least affected
Symbolic,
them.
right?
Yeah, but it at least affected those people who wanted change in that there's this sort of visual, physical representation of how immovable that regime is. Maybe now they're being a different face of a guy who really hasn't accomplished very much at all. He was the Minister of Higher Education. Can you imagine electing the Secretary of Education? Even more narrow, the Secretary of Higher Education, if we had one, to be the head of state. The person would be a little bit of everybody would just laugh off anything that person said, of course, as not being their own thinking. So it'll be interesting to see what, if anything, Cuban people do with this person, and how public that person even is, right? You may end up with Raul still being the face of government, even if he's not in that specific role. If you want to learn more about all this stuff, we have 2 other videos in the description of this podcast episode. One of them is a panel discussion that aired on Al Jazeera English, which I am including because you have heard mention of one of the guys in here before. In a recent episode of the podcast, we mentioned a video of a guy who was cleaning up a mangrove swamp. Happens to be the director of the Cuba study group, so he's on this panel with a U.S. ambassador and a Cuban ambassador, which is where I brought in that quote about continuity or change for continuity. The other is a much longer presentation by John Suárez, who is on the more conservative, hardline Cuban exile side of things. But it's a presentation that he gives about communism in Cuba, which, regardless of your politics, I think served as a very good primer for anybody who wants to sort of dive deep into that history of the Communist Party in Cuba and the way that it functions and the way that it's maintained power. So we won't go any deeper into that, but we will go deep into this word from our sponsor, El Galán Cigars, which is a representative of all the wonderful things that a Cuban can accomplish when he is not bogged down by the Cuban regime. Felix Mesa.
Nice.
A model Cuban exile, model Cuban American. El Galán Cigars. El Galán Reserva Especial is available in 4 box-pressed sizes, 5x52 airosos, the 5 3/4 by 54 apuestos, the 6x52 gallardos, which is a torpedo, the 6x60 obesos, and these are all 100% Nicaraguan cigars with Jalapa Oscuro wrappers, available in stores nationwide. You can find them online at elgalancigars.com. By them, I mean the company. You can find the company online at elgalancigars.com, as well as on social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at El Galán Cigars, ELGALAN, El Galán Cigars, El Galán Cigars, El Galán Cigars, El Galán Cigars. So check them out, good friend of the magazine and of the podcast. While El Galán Cigars provides an explosion of flavor, Southwest Airlines is providing an explosion of engines.
Oh, God, Nick, that's
It was a freaky time for air travel people. If you fly, I have to imagine, I'll be flying soon. I have to imagine that this makes you just a tad nervous. Anytime these things happen, even though they're exceedingly rare, this kind of thing makes you just a tiny bit more jittery. Maybe you disagree. Does this happen with you? Like if you were flying the day after the Southwest thing happened.
I have to always say this because you're dealing with I think a different animal with me. I tend to fly on 9/11 every year. I don't deal with that fear in airplanes. My dad worked for Eastern when I was a child, so I've been flying since childhood quite regularly, and I'm not saying that I don't feel fear if the thing starts to rattle and shake or feels like we're gonna fall out of the sky, of course. But I've been on a plane where we've had engine failure. I continue to fly. It doesn't make me hesitate in any way.
Sure.
Obviously, the 9/11 one is motivated differently. That's a go F yourself to the terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
The other I'm talking about just the unlikeliness of anything happening, right? I always feel like you're much more danger when I'm jumping in my car here to go home is far more dangerous than getting on an airplane.
Yeah, and I agree with that to some extent, right? Like on an intellectual level, I know a part of me is like, okay, well, it happened. What are the odds it's going to happen now that I'm getting on this plane? Pretty slim. On the other hand, like if I'm on a plane after that happens and I feel some intense turbulence, it changes my like gut reaction.
You know when it changes for me when my kids are on the plane with me.
Sure. Yeah.
So when I'm on the plane, I'll sleep through whatever is going on. I will continue to listen to whatever audiobook or movie I'm watching. It doesn't stop me. But when my kids are on the plane, it does change.
Yeah.
I feel different. I notice it in myself. So yeah, in that sense, you do feel a little bit different, but again, it's so unlikely.
Yeah. What say you, Ivan?
It's still amazing how they were able to navigate that plane with only one engine, one of the windows out. I was looking at some stuff they spammed me while I was reading that news story about some Honolulu flight back in the 1980s that the roof ripped off and they still flew the plane to California with 8 people getting sucked out of the plane. So I find it amazing that these planes, even though they're damaged and in the worst of shape, they can still get it to where they need to go.
You know, one thing I did think about as I was reading the news is Bill Niederer, who owns a cigar store in Phoenix, but is a pilot for Southwest.
Oh wow!
When I saw the news, I jumped on Bill's Facebook page just to make sure he wasn't on flight 1380.
Yeah.
And on Bill's page, I saw a link to which I put in the show notes.
Okay.
I saw, which maybe we can put that in the details.
Yeah.
But I saw a link to the transcript or the audio from the cockpit, and Captain Tammy Jo, I believe is her name, the pilot. Just how calm she was throughout this entire thing, and almost matter of fact. Yes, we've got one engine down. It's on fire, and it's not on fire anymore. We're flying in, but there's a part missing on the plane. It's like just very matter of fact, just doing her job, and I was thoroughly impressed by that.
Well, my understanding is that she was like a pioneer fighter pilot.
I didn't even look into any of this on her history, I just listened to her speaking, and the level of calm was amazing.
Speaking of level of calm, I was looking at someone who was on board, I believe near the window that got blown out, and he was Facebooking live while the window was out. Did you see this, Nick?
No.
You showed it to me.
Yeah, so there was a lot of spelling errors, but I was trying to put myself in the position of this person with the oxygen mask over his face, and then doing live updates of what they were going through while this plane was losing altitude and the person was getting sucked out the window. So that was pretty stoic on his part also.
Yeah. So here's another question. You're in this situation. Do you pull your phone out and start recording video? Is that the move?
I would pull my phone out and start connecting with my family to let them know. That would be my number one thing.
Yeah.
If I'm all done, I mean, I think I'd probably want to stay on with them till we're safe.
Right.
Right, because even what you don't know is you don't know what's happening. You don't know if the other engine's going to go. You're now flying with single point of failure. So I think I'd want to be on with my family, like chilling them out.
I'm hitting the stewardess button. Ma'am, Can I get a drink, please? I think I'm going to need one here. I just shit my pants. It's pretty scary.
You're going to need a refill.
Yeah, no kidding.
Just for the sake of naming her, since we're mentioning her name is Tammy Jo Schultz. She's the one who landed that plane, and she was one of the first female fighter pilots in the U.S. Navy.
Give me a horn for Tammy.
Here you go, Tammy. This one's for you.
Congratulations, Tammy. You got a horn.
You're a badass.
Yeah, so pretty cool story. I have to imagine it's only a matter of time before they do the movie. Yeah, I mean,
Move over, Sully.
Yeah, if Sully gets a movie, Tammy gets a movie for sure.
I know, but she landed it on runway 24L.
Yeah, but this one gives you the excuse to do all the fighter pilot scenes. Come on.
You get to bring back the Righteous Brothers.
That's right. Hey, why not? All right, so from the news in air travel accidents to the news from Cigar Town. This is a new thing that we're doing on this podcast. It'll be a recurring thing. But, listeners of the Cigar Snob podcast are interested in cigars, and we want to feed you some info while you're here. So
feed them, Nick. Feed them.
We'll just give you some of the headlines from the last week. This is by no means exhaustive. Apologies if we've left you out for some reason, but we can't spend the whole podcast talking about news. But 3 noteworthy stories. So, Black Label Trading Company announced the shipment of Bishop's Blend Vintage 2018 to retailers. The cigars are made at Fábrica Oveja Negra in Estelí, Nicaragua. Bishop's Blend features an Ecuadorian Habano wrapper and binder around fillers from Nicaragua, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. That's available in Corona Larga, Robusto. Oh, those are two different sizes. I'm sorry. In Corona Larga.
It sounded like you were
and
going to name like
Robusto.
8 other sizes.
Yeah. They retail for $11.50 and $11 respectively. This year marks the 50th anniversary of both TAA and Joya de Nicaragua. So, according to a press release from Drew Estate, they are celebrating with the release of the Antaño Gran Reserva Presidente, which is exclusively for TAA member retailers. If you've got one of those in your neck of the woods, you'll want to ask them about this special cigar.
Hit them up.
Especially if you're already a fan of Antaño Gran Reserva. The Presidente is the exclusive Vitola, so that's a box-pressed 6 3/4 by 50, which supposedly is a favorite Vitola of Dr. Alejandro Martinez Cuenca.
Hey, isn't he going to be featured in an upcoming podcast?
Yep, the next episode of this podcast will be an interview that you, Eric, did with Dr. Martinez Cuenca.
You chimed in at the end, though.
I did chime in at the end of that interview. So, yeah, 95% Eric with a little dash of
Nikki.
So, look out for that episode of the podcast. And also, like we said, ask your TAA stores about the Antaño Gran Reserva Presidente. Those retail for $12.50 per cigar. And finally, this is a pretty interesting story. Not often that we get something this, out of left field, subject matter-wise. Plasencia Cigars, the makers of our most recent cigar of the year, the Plasencia Almafuerte, have announced an initiative to make their company more eco-friendly, according to a press release. The company claims to be the largest producer of tobacco in Central America. Not that I don't believe them, but you know how this industry is. If somebody claims to be the biggest or the best or whatever, and somebody's going to say, I don't know about that. So that's their claim. We're not putting our name on it.
You're a lawyer now, Nick?
No, you know how this
This
gets.
one's true, though.
Yeah. No, I don't doubt it. I'm just saying. So anyway, they have announced an initiative to make their company more eco-friendly. And given the size of this company, any commitment that is company-wide is pretty big. So the initiative includes plans to develop a natural forest on one of the company's Esteli farms, which is an idea inspired by a 2014 TED Talk by, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Aforest?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm in the same boat.
So founder of whatever that is, Shubhendu Sharma, which I might also be saying wrong. Plasencia has more than 3,000 acres of land in Central America, and Plasencia has partnered with a forest to find opportunities to add forest to all of that landscape. Of course, you have 3,000 acres. You might own all that land, but not every single square foot of that land has a tobacco plant coming out of it. So They're looking for ways to turn the barren land or the unfarmable land that they own into forest. So that's pretty cool.
I love it.
Especially in terms of travel to Esteli and other places in Central America. If you're a cigar tourist, this, it'll probably be a while before you really experience the full vision of it, but pretty cool that you'll now have that aspect to your cigar tourism experience.
Did I read somewhere that one of these, forestation efforts is going to actually be in the shape of the Plasencia logo?
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool, too.
That is pretty cool. So,
I love that a TED Talk is what inspired this.
Right. Well, and not only inspired, but they went to the organization of the guy who did the TED Talk. And
I love it.
Help us put some trees around here, man. So
hook us up.
Hook us up with some
Shubendu?
forest. I'll take one forest, please. All right. So back to our featured cigar for just a moment.
You're skipping.
What am I skipping?
You are skipping.
Well, no, I mean back to the featured cigar and the topic of the cigar, which is this video. Yeah. So we're smoking Florida Sun-Grown, and the reason that we are smoking Florida Sun-Grown today is, speaking of inspired by videos online, we were inspired by a video posted by Florida Sun-Grown and Corona owner Jeff Borshwicks that he posted, and we'll again link to this in the description of this podcast, from his farm. Summary: he posts this video from his farm showing an entire crop of 50,000 dead plants that were destroyed due to just human error on the farm when an herbicide that was supposed to go into an adjacent pond to control weeds ended up, if I'm not mistaken, in the irrigation system and ended up on the tobacco plants. So it killed 50,000 plants just ahead of one of Drew Estate's barn smoker events when they would have had a full crop in the field. Instead, they're switching to the plan of having guests at this barn smoker take part in planting tobacco in that field. So, they're kind of making do with that. But the reason that we thought to talk about this,
making lemonade.
yeah, the reason we thought to talk about this was that I think at least most of us, if not all of us, think this is a pretty cool thing that he's been as open about it as he has been.
Yeah, I was impressed by that.
Yeah.
Normally in the cigar business, there's if something terrible happens to a crop or something, the last thing they want to do is tell you about it. And here he is getting right in front of it, showing you video of what dead plants look like, what they should have looked like. They're like right next to it. There were some that were like spared somehow, and so I was impressed by that. And kudos to Jeff, man. He's a stand-up dude.
Yeah.
Love that guy.
Yeah, it's not often that in this or in any other industry that you have somebody come out and when they didn't necessarily have to, right? They could have just...
They could have played that like, hey, this year we wanted to give you guys a different experience and have you plant,
right,
instead of have you harvest.
Exactly.
It wouldn't have been noticed.
Yeah. So that kind of transparency, I think, helps. It makes you feel a little bit more connected to and a little bit more familiar with the brand and with the people behind it. So I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know if that's something
you were out there with me, Ivan.
Yeah.
That was the day you came in from the north.
Came in from the north.
Love that inside joke.
But you remember that?
Yeah. Jeff let us ride the tractor. It was
Yes.
fun.
Eat fruits and
Yeah.
vegetables.
Yeah, it was
We ate
great.
his
we
melon.
were eating vegetables like if they were fruits,
Yeah.
which was interesting.
Claremont, by the way, has some of the best barbecue.
Oh yeah,
In Florida.
there is good barbecue there.
Yeah.
Do we have a barbecue recommendation here?
What is the name of that place, Ivan? Uncle Kenny's Barbecue. That's the one I went to. That was awesome.
I believe I went to one called Oakwood Smokehouse.
I don't like when you start with "I believe." I don't like that.
I believe I can fly.
Yeah, that's what I like. But yeah, no, Uncle Kenny's was cool. It's like a little shack in a little strip mall, but it was just awesome. My kids loved it. We store our trailer actually near Claremont, and every time we go back to pick up the trailer for something, we always go to Uncle Kenny's. So
All right,
shout
so
out
there
to
you have
Uncle.
it. Those are the places you want to stop into. We'll put links to those things in the description of the podcast. So if you happen to go to
The smokeout, no?
the barn
The
smoker,
barn
or
smoker.
the smokeout.
Just gonna rebrand this thing for him.
No, man, you just go down there. You can go for the barn smoker. Just go tell Jeff, hey, do me a favor, smoke me out. So yeah, check out. We'll have a link to that video, but definitely worth checking out. I think it was very cool to see a farm owner be that transparent about it and sort of let you in on that aspect of the hazards of the business. Speaking of, where are we with the cigar? What are your...
And it has been super consistent. It has stayed exactly the same. And by the way, producing a tremendous amount of smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And but construction has been great. Ash beautiful. So yeah, no, it's working. If this is a flavor profile that you like,
Yeah.
and again, it's hard to explain that profile, especially since it seems to be changing from year to year. But if you like this, I would say it's hearty Nicaraguan with a slightly herbal touch.
Yeah.
And a bit of the sweetness from the wrapper. That's kind of where I'm at with the flavor profile for it. Man, it has stayed consistent all the way through. I'm just past halfway.
Yeah, I like it. It's a profile that I prefer. I love the size that I got this time around.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
You're a box press fan?
I am, especially on the larger sizes. So you said it was 2017?
No, that was mine. Yours was a release from this year.
This year? Yeah, so it's like a medium full right now with a little bit of pepper. Maybe aged for another 6 months to a year. I mean, this thing would be even better than it is now. I like it.
Cool. I'm going to go out on a limb in terms of weird recommendations. This is not a point that I've ever made about a cigar before, but it occurs to me that this is a good porch cigar. So if you're in a cigar lounge, the smoke output is so much that it's not that it's a bad thing, but it's a lot of smoke. However, that's nice when you've got a cigar with such a great aroma. You don't want something with very little smoke output, and then it sort of gets lost in the open space. But if you're on a porch, this is a cigar that you will probably very fully appreciate, despite not being in a closed room. So this is if you're somebody who smokes on a porch and you feel like you're not getting enough of the aroma of your cigars because you're out in a windy situation or whatever.
Can't get enough of your love.
That's right. If you can't get enough of Jeff's love, this is the way to go. Jeff.
By the way, what did you think of Jeff's look? I hadn't seen him in a while.
I dig the beard.
I dig it too.
Yeah.
He's got like the pointy beard.
Very
now.
cool.
Yeah, he's got like this likable supervillain
Yeah.
thing going on.
I didn't think about it like that, but yeah.
He's got like yeah.
And he's gotten more country as the years have gone by.
Telling
like
you,
his
man.
accent has gotten
Yeah.
really thick now.
Dude, you can't add watermelon giveaways to your cigar business.
I agree.
And not get a little more country.
Yeah.
For sure. So, in the last
By the
episode,
way, the accent though, sorry to interrupt
No.
you, but the accent has not impacted his wife Tanya, who still has a very thick Scottish accent.
Right,
And
yeah.
it's no less Scottish than it was before.
yeah, we
She's a trip.
a couple of IPCPRs ago, we did a series of videos that people very much liked, where we just sort of asked people very random questions, and one of them was boxers or briefs. She was the only one who hit us with
Knickers.
Knickers, yes.
I love that.
Knickers.
I love that. So, anyway,
Hey, why don't you put a link to that video?
we'll put a link to that video if you want to see what kind of underwear people in the cigar industry are wearing. Check out the description of this
Boom.
podcast episode, and we will have a link to that video.
It's going to be a link-heavy description.
Loaded with links. We will also link to the NBA playoffs bracket, in case. Yeah, just
Seriously?
why not?
Do
We're
we need
linking
to-
everything. We're linking all the things. In a recent episode of the podcast, we made a few mild predictions. We're not going to spend too much time on it, but where are we? Do you guys remember what predictions each of you made?
Well, I did a total hedge job, right? I chose when you asked for upset.
Right.
I chose Milwaukee as my team, upsetting the Celtics. But in the same breath, I told you how them tanking at the end of the year was going to hurt them in the playoffs. So I was going to win either way there. And the tanking is what's happening, right? They're down 0-2 to the Celtics. So
Yeah.
I had no way to lose there. That's how you do
Not
that.
a big surprise. They would have lost to anybody who they would have played.
Well, let's see how they do at home, right? Because they lost two. The
On the
7
road, yeah.
seed lost 2 to the 2 seed in Boston.
Ivan is the perennial. In Spanish, it would be agua fiesta.
I don't know what that one means. Give us a description of what
Just
an
a
agua
bucket
fiesta
of
is.
cold water
Oh,
on the party.
Yeah. Raining on the parade.
Raining on the parade. That's the right way.
Yeah. Ivan, what was your upset prediction?
I'm not sure.
Utah.
Utah. Well, Utah is that series is tied 1-1 as we speak.
I'm looking
Was
good.
Utah on the road?
I'm looking
Yes.
good.
You're looking good so far, as am I. I predicted the Heat besting the Sixers, and
That's a great series.
thanks to some Wade heroics,
Yes.
that series is also tied 1-1. Although Game 1 was super lopsided, so unless Wade is doing funky stuff to his legs to keep that up for a while.
No, you know what? They're drinking. All these dudes are drinking alkaline water, and they're claiming that this may be a topic for another podcast, but they're claiming that this alkaline water helps them stay healthy longer.
It's probably kombucha.
It's probably kombucha.
Quite likely.
They don't want to give away their secrets, but it's kombucha.
Yeah. Now you know. You heard it here first. Dwayne Wade drinks kombucha. All right. So with that, we will cut to a word from our sponsor, Villiger Cigars. Villiger Cigars is celebrating 130 years in tobacco and unveiling its first ever full-bodied premium handmade cigar in the Villiger La Vencedora. It's a follow-up to the highly acclaimed Villiger La Flor de Inclán and Villiger Sandoro Colorado. The Nicaraguan Puro is wrapped in a beautiful Nicaraguan Habano Oscuro wrapper and boasts a potent full-bodied smoking experience featuring highly seasoned, hearty flavors. The Villiger La Vencedora is a palate-pleasing, full-bodied yet elegant cigar that will satisfy the cigar connoisseur as well as the casual smoker. Make sure that you visit Villiger online at villigercigars.com. Check them out on Facebook, facebook.com/villiger.northamerica. Twitter at Villiger Cigars, that's cigars with an S at the end, and Instagram at Villiger Cigar. Just Villiger Cigar, no S at the end on Instagram. All right, and we're back. As always, we're going to round out this episode with some recommendations for you. First, however, I will recommend that you go back into the Cigar Snob podcast archives and check out or Eric's interview with Chef Michael Beltran. Michael Beltran is the chef at Ariete, which is a very popular newish Miami restaurant. Very interesting interview, especially if you like the change of pace from cigar industry interviews. Michael is not in the cigar industry, but he is an avid smoker, and it's cool to hear from somebody who knows that side of the flavor business, so to speak, talking about pairing cigars, what he likes to eat before his smoking.
That boy can eat.
I mean,
He can cook too.
Yeah, he's a badass. Dude.
So
I visited
you went back actually.
I visited this weekend. Yeah, I took my wife for the first time, and now this is her favorite restaurant.
So you know what we didn't do on there?
You're welcome.
That interview doesn't have any menu recommendations. Did you guys eat anything that?
We were on a tight schedule though.
Yeah.
So we had to sort of cut it short. We were both on a tight schedule. I think I talked about it on that podcast. Smoked chicken wings.
Right.
Were outrageous. That tuna preserve that they do.
Tuna.
Too much tuna.
Too much tuna.
Too much tuna.
Yeah, and what they focus on is like fresh ingredients, right? So that's kind of their big thing. And yeah, I haven't had anything there that I don't like. The churro donut is as a dessert is outrageous.
That sounds pretty neat.
Yeah, no, it is. So anyway, that's what is that, episode number 24?
24.
Yeah.
Ivan, did you have anything on your visit that we didn't just talk about?
I went all tapas style. So we did a lot of appetizers. We did the hummus. My wife eats hummus and drinks cocktails. That's
her dinner.
That's her dinner. They also had eggplant beignet. So that's a super interesting
I hadn't had that.
Is that sweet?
combo. It is fairly sweet, but it's not a dessert. So it's just great. It's
Cool.
I don't know how Michael came up with this one, but it's delicious. Yeah, the old fashioned's amazing too.
The old fashioned's good.
Very cool. I have not been, so I gotta take all of these recommendations and go in there with a checklist.
Drew Estate, by the way, the guys over there love Ariete also.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they always stop in to eat. And Michael, last time I was there, told me that they had just stopped by. So
Cool.
Well, the ashtray, the cigar ashtray that they plop down when you. So they're savvy in that when they see you walk in with cigars and you're eating outdoors, they know to hook you up with a cigar ashtray, and it's always at least every time I've smoked out there, it's always a Drew Estate ashtray. So
Nice. Very cool. On to our parting recommendations. As we do every episode, we have some recommendations of things you should do, eat, smoke, drink, listen to, watch, read, whatever. Ivan, what do you got?
So tax day has come and gone. So I just used TurboTax to do my taxes. For all of you out there, and I know they're pretty big, who aren't using it and are using an accountant, and you can do it yourself because you can get more tax breaks if you're not a CPA and decide to be a little shady like I am. I would go the TurboTax Deluxe version where you can donate the hell out of charitable contributions. And it's a very...
That's the difference between the standard and the deluxe.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a very easy way to put 18 pairs of underwear that you donated to the Salvation Army or whatever. But anyways, if you're not using it, I would recommend using it.
All right, TurboTax Deluxe is the...
That was a subdued recommendation from Ivan, not the
men's
knickers
belt.
or
Yeah,
the garters.
I'll have something more exciting next time around.
No, that's all right. Were you wearing your garter belt as you did your taxes?
Yes or no? Yes
of
or
course,
no?
Yeah.
Or extra deduction for me.
Right. I wonder what you can deduct for donating a men's garter belt. If that's not on there, I'd say we're being cheated as a country.
Depends what kind of condition it is, but I bet you get some money.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so Eric, what do you got for the people?
So I'm currently reading Principles by Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio, for those of you that don't know, is one of the 100 wealthiest people in the world. He's a big-time investor, Bridgewater Capital and those things. Pretty amazing insights into his decision-making. Pretty cool stuff. So I'm digging that. Principles by Ray Dalio. And if I may, a second recommendation.
Yep.
And that is that Saturday I will be at Cava Cigar's grand opening.
This is Saturday the 21st.
Saturday the 21st, yes. When is this going to go? Hey, look at that.
Today or tomorrow, so the 19th or 20th.
Okay. So you will have time. If you're in the South Florida area, I would go check out Cava Cigar's grand opening on the 21st, which is Saturday at 5 p.m. They're going to have live music, have personalities there like AJ Fernandez, and yours truly. I will be there as well.
Cool.
So that's what I got going.
If you're not in the Southwest Dade area, it's worth noting that Cava is kind of like in a suburban area, but it's very close to both the Palmetto and US 1. So it's easy to get to if you're somewhat out of towner. If you have to make a little bit of a drive and you're wondering like, oh, how far? It's very close to like easy highway access. So you should be able to get there without too much trouble. So yeah, Cava Cigars on Saturday. I am recommending an interview that Dave Rubin, who's got a YouTube channel called The Rubin Report, did with economist Thomas Sowell. I've recommended a book of his many, many podcasts ago. But Thomas Sowell is an economist who was sort of like the one-time Marxist, now very conservative protege of Milton Friedman. Just a super interesting guy to hear from. Like, I'm not an economist. I don't read about economics all the time. But anytime that I hear this guy talking for more than 5 minutes, it's like I got to listen because he is just a super, super interesting guy to hear talk about everything from politics to race to, of course, economics, and puts everything in these very, conversational layman's terms. And also just a very spunky old dude. Like,
Oh yeah, because Milton Friedman, as brilliant as he was, not that easy to listen to.
yeah, Milton Friedman. But what they have in common is that each of them is a little bit of a smartass.
Yep.
But Thomas Sowell brings the Southside Chicago smartass to the game. I think he's from the South Side. I could be confusing him with somebody else. Let's pause right here. I was incorrect. He is from Harlem, but is from the University of Chicago School of Economics. So that's where the Chicago confusion came from. But he's got the big city smartass thing. Milton Friedman was sort of like the economics equivalent of like the snarky neurotic Jewish comedian.
Yep.
Thing, and Thomas Sowell was sort of like his. He was like the prior to Milton Friedman's Seinfeld, and you see them in like Q&A sessions, and they're just like making fools of everybody around them in a way that's like very fun to watch.
Yeah.
And in a way, but Sowell is a little bit less academic in his language than Friedman is. So yeah, very cool interview.
One thing, when I said that Milton Friedman was hard to listen to, that's not entirely true. He was difficult to read.
Sure.
Just reading Milton Friedman. I tried to really get into that to educate myself on economics early on, and man, that stuff puts you down. You can't read it while lying down.
Yeah.
You will be asleep in minutes.
Yeah. So check that out. And also, if you're not familiar with the Rubin Report, a lot of very interesting conversations there with people. Like Bob Saget does an interview. There are a lot of university professors and actors and comedians.
But the Rubin Report, what is the focus of that podcast?
It's all long form interviews, and I don't know if this is like an official thing, but lately the focus of the conversations has been like political correctness and speech freedom stuff. So, for example, he'll talk to comedians about like why they don't do college campuses anymore, and jokes being off limits and whether that's a good or a bad thing and that sort of thing. So in the case of Thomas Sowell, I mean, a lot of it ends up being race because Thomas Sowell's pet issue for a long time has been racism, and his own perspective on welfare programs hurting the people they purport to help more than they help and whatever. So anyway, worth checking out that interview if you're into that sort of thing. It's about 45 minutes long. All right, with that, I don't know if we have any other things we want to get into.
Oh, man, I'm good.
Not me.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Cigar Snob podcast. You can find us on social media. Look for Cigar Snob Mag. That's Cigar Snob MAG, or cigarsnobmag.com. You can find all the podcasts at cigarsnobmag.com/podcast. Subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. All right, until next time.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao. I like ciao, ciao.